When someone you once cared about suddenly tries to reappear in your life, it rarely happens without a deeper emotional reason. It happens because your silence created a contrast she never expected. When you walked away, she thought it would be temporary, that you would chase, that you would react, that you would somehow keep giving her the attention she believed she deserved. She assumed you would still be there as the safety net she could fall back on. But when you went quiet, truly quiet, not the type of silence meant to provoke her, but the type born from self respect, it hit her differently. Silence is powerful because it removes the emotional supply she was used to. It removes the reassurance she didn't appreciate. It removes the validation she thought she could get whenever she snapped her fingers. And that emptiness is what forces her to feel the weight of losing you. At first, she might have felt relief, even excitement, thinking she was free to explore new options or chase new experiences. But that excitement fades fast when she realizes what she walked away from wasn't easily replaced. She starts to compare the energy of other people to the energy you gave her. She compares the attention others give her to the attention you gave her. She compares the peace, the security, the emotional understanding she once found in you to the chaos she might be dealing with now. And that comparison is what begins to turn in her mind like a wheel that won't stop spinning. That's where regret begins. Not loud at first, just small whispers. But whispers have power when they grow in silence. Your silence becomes a mirror she didn't want to look into. For the first time, she sees herself from the outside. She sees the patterns she repeated. She sees the way she pushed you away. She sees how she took you for granted because she thought she had unlimited chances. She starts wondering if she misjudged you, if maybe you weren't the one who needed to change, but she was. And the moment she realizes you're no longer orbiting around her, the moment she feels that you might actually be done, something shifts inside her. It's not love that pulls her back at first, it's fear. Fear of losing comfort, fear of losing control, fear of being forgotten by someone who once made her feel significant. But that's exactly where the test begins, because the truth is, she's not coming back because she woke up one morning suddenly transformed. She's coming back because your silence created a void she wasn't prepared to face. When someone leaves your life thinking they can return whenever they want, it's usually because they never believed you had the strength to detach. So when you finally do detach, it shakes their ego, it shakes their certainty, it shakes their belief that you would always be available. Silence breaks illusions. Silence forces reflection. Silence changes the dynamic completely. And now, because of that silence, she will come back not out of clarity, but out of confusion, not out of commitment, but out of curiosity. She wants to see if she still matters, if she still has a place, if she still holds influence over your emotions. It's not always malicious, it's just human nature. People return to where they once felt safe, even when they were the ones who walked away. But here is the part that truly matters. Your silence didn't just change her, it changed you. And when she comes back, you'll feel it. You'll feel the difference in your energy, your boundaries, your expectations. You'll notice the shift in how you respond because the silence that shook her is the same silence that healed you. And in that moment, you'll realize something powerful. She may be returning to test you, but you're no longer the same person she walked away from. Only then does the real decision begin. When someone you once cared about tries to circle back into your life, they don't come back with full honesty or full vulnerability. They come back in patterns, small, subtle tests designed to measure how much access they still have to you. These tests aren't always obvious. Sometimes they come disguised as harmless messages, a simple, hey, or how have you been? Other times it's an indirect story posted online, something meant to catch your attention, something meant to trigger a reaction. And what you need to understand is that none of these moves are random. They are calculated attempts to see if your heart is still open, if your boundaries are still weak, if your silence can be broken with the slightest nudge. She wants to know one thing above all: do you still care? Not because she suddenly realized your value in a deep, mature way, but because she wants reassurance that the emotional door she closed is still unlocked for her return. When someone leaves, they often assume they can revisit the situation whenever it benefits them. They believe their absence won't truly change anything because, in their mind, you were always the one who tried harder, cared more, or held on longer. But when time passes and you stay silent, when you don't react to her bait, when you don't chase her shadow, she starts to worry. She starts to wonder if she miscalculated your strength. That's when she begins testing the waters. Her tests come from a place of curiosity, insecurity, and ego. When someone walks away thinking they had the upper hand, your growth threatens that narrative. Your silence threatens that narrative. Your peace threatens that narrative. She might not even realize consciously why she's checking on you, but subconsciously, she needs to know if she still has emotional pull. And this is where many men get trapped. They mistake these little touches of attention for emotional investment. They mistake, I miss talking to you, for genuine change. But these early interactions are not signs of transformation. They are signals of uncertainty. When someone truly regrets losing you, they don't test you. They communicate clearly. They acknowledge their mistakes. They express genuine accountability. They show emotional maturity. But when someone returns with vague energy, mixed signals, or half hearted outreach, that isn't love. That's fear of losing relevance. That's fear of losing control. That's fear of watching you move on without her. And she wants to know, does she still have influence? Could she still walk back into your life if she wanted to? Is your heart still an open door? This is why her return is a test for you, not for her. Because how you respond determines the chapter that follows. If you instantly reply, instantly validate, instantly show emotional availability, you confirm her suspicion, you never truly detached. And once she knows that the dynamic shifts back in her favor, she relaxes, she pulls away again, her ego resets. She was never looking for reconnection, she was looking for reassurance. But if you respond calmly, slowly, with distance and self respect, if you don't emotionally overinvest, if you let her feel the difference in your tone, in your pace, in your presence, she feels it deeply. She feels that something changed. She feels that the emotional power she once had over your heart is no longer the same, and that's when the real regret begins to grow inside her. Testing you is easy. Passing the test is where your strength matters. When she tries to re enter your life, recognize that your silence already told her who you've become. Now, your self control must show her that this time you won't give her the same version of you she walked away from. Only then do you protect your peace and prove to yourself, not to her, that you've truly evolved. When someone you let go starts creeping back into your life, the shift in their behavior doesn't happen randomly. It happens because the reality they thought they were ready for, the reality of living without you, hits them harder and deeper than they expected. At first, they feel free, they feel confident in their decision, they feel like they made the right choice. But freedom without wisdom eventually turns into loneliness, confusion, and regret. And that's when the memories start creeping in. Not the dramatic ones, not the arguments or the endings, but the quiet, intimate moments that made them feel safe. The way you listened, the way you cared without conditions, the way you made their life more stable, more whole, more grounded. They start realizing slowly that what they walked away from isn't something they can easily replace. People don't wake up one day overwhelmed with regret. It builds, it develops over time in silence, in unexpected ways. She might be surrounded by people, but no one truly understands her the way you did. She might be talking to someone new, but the connection feels shallow compared to what she had with you. She might be living her life normally, but the emotional comfort she once felt becomes harder to replicate, and that's when the emotional gaps begin to appear. The moments where she feels the absence instead of the excitement, the moments where the world becomes a little quieter, a little colder, a little less meaningful because the person who once made it warmer is no longer there. Regret often arrives disguised at first. She might tell herself she just misses the past, or she's just curious how you're doing, or she just wants closure. But those are excuses. What she really feels is the stark difference between the life she imagined she would have without you and the reality she ended up with. She starts replaying old memories, not the painful ones, but the good ones. The moments when you showed up, the moments when you gave more than she appreciated, the moments she brushed off, thinking she could find that same energy anywhere else. Now she sees how rare it was, and this regret becomes stronger every time she encounters something or someone who makes her realize how stable, loyal, and consistent you truly were. Most people don't give that kind of energy. Most people don't care at that depth. Most people aren't steady when everything around them feels uncertain. You're different. Even if you didn't fully realize it at the time, she might have taken your presence for granted because she assumed you'd always be there. She assumed love like yours doesn't fade. She assumed you were the type to hold on no matter what. But then you let go. You stayed silent. You moved on, not loudly, but with quiet strength. And that silence becomes the mirror she didn't want to look into. The more she sees you at peace, the more she feels the weight of what she lost. Because regret is strongest when the opportunity to return feels uncertain. When she's no longer sure if she can get back the version of you she remembers. When she isn't sure if you still feel anything at all. Her fear of losing you forever grows each time she notices you're not chasing, not asking. And that fear amplifies regret into something heavier, something emotional, something that lingers in the back of her mind, even on her best days. Regret grows when reality replaces fantasy. Regret grows when silence replaces attention. Regret grows when she realizes she didn't just lose a person, she lost a rare kind of love. And it grows even more when she sees that the person she thought would wait forever isn't waiting anymore. And that's when she comes back, not because she's ready, not because she's healed, but because regret has finally become louder than her pride. Sometimes the reason someone you let go comes back to test you isn't because they suddenly want to build something healthy, permanent, or meaningful with you again. It's because they want to see if they still have access to you. They want to know if the door they walked out of is still open. Pride, ego, and insecurity often push people to revisit the situations they once abandoned, not because they see your value clearly now, but because they're afraid of losing the control they once had. This kind of return isn't about love, it's about reassurance. It's about checking whether you've truly moved on or whether you're still emotionally available to them whenever they feel like returning. This test begins subtly, a message out of nowhere, a reaction to an old post, a hey, just checking on you. Something small, something harmless, something that doesn't risk rejection too heavy. They want to see your temperature. Are you cold? Are you warm? Are you still hurt? Are you still waiting? They want to know if their absence impacted you or if you simply adjusted without them. The truth is, people who walk away often assume they can come back whenever they want. They assume they still occupy space in your mind. They assume you haven't healed. They assume your feelings are still sitting there untouched, waiting for their return. This assumption isn't about confidence, it's about comfort. It's about their need to feel that even though they chose to leave, they didn't lose you completely. It's a safety net for them. And when they sense that your life is moving forward, that you are healing, that you are no longer reacting emotionally, something inside them panics. The control they believe they had starts slipping away. They begin to feel the discomfort of realizing you are no longer orbiting around their presence or their approval. And that's when the test becomes more intentional. They may start bringing up the past lightly, trying to see if there's emotional tension they can still activate. They may compliment you, trying to see if you still crave their validation. They may ask personal questions, trying to see if you're seeing someone new. They may pretend they just want peace, just want closure, just want to clear the air. But behind all these soft approaches is one core purpose to measure their influence over you. The truth is, people don't test what they don't care about losing. They test what they feel slipping. They test what once served their ego. They test what once gave them comfort, attention, or unconditional energy. And when they feel that energy disappearing, they return not with clarity, not with commitment, but with curiosity mixed with insecurity. They want to know if you've really changed or if the old version of you, the one who tolerated more than you should have, is still available. This is why silence is powerful. This is why distance matters. Because the moment they sense you're no longer emotionally tied to them, they begin questioning their choices. Your stillness becomes a mirror that reflects their own behavior back at them. They start wondering if they were wrong. They start wondering if you got stronger without them. They start wondering if you've become someone they no longer have access to. And that thought eats at them more than anything. This test is proof of one thing: you're no longer predictable to them, and that unpredictability threatens their ego. They want to know if the power they once had over you still exists, or if time has shifted the dynamic completely. And when they return with vague intentions, mixed signals, or emotional breadcrumbs, it's not because they want to rebuild, it's because they want to confirm their relevance. But the real power lies in not giving them the answer they're searching for. Silence is the only way to pass this test. Silence shows them that you no longer belong to the past version of yourself they're trying to reconnect with. Silence is the ultimate shift the moment everything becomes clear to them. And in the end, that silence is what sets you free. Sometimes the person who comes back to test you doesn't return with drama, anger, or clear intentions. Instead, they return with softness, with friendliness, with casual conversations. They approach you in a way that seems harmless on the surface, but beneath it lies something deeper, something strategic. They want to slide back into your life without alarming you, without triggering your defenses, without making you question their motives. They want to ease their way in quietly, gently, in small doses. And this kind of quiet return is often more dangerous than an emotional one because it's the kind that can make you lower your guard without realizing it. They might send a light message like, "Hope you're doing well," or comment on something small and innocent. They might try to reconnect through memories. Remember when, as if the past can be used to soften the present. They might act supportive, asking how life is going, showing interest in your growth, pretending they simply want to rebuild a friendship. But hidden behind that soft approach is a silent question they desperately want answered. Can I still step back into your life whenever I choose? You'll notice that people who once hurt you rarely come back with an apology strong enough to match the damage they caused. And that's because they aren't returning to fix the past, they're returning to control the future. Their real goal is to see whether you've changed, whether you've healed, whether you've built standards they can no longer slip past. Their gentleness isn't always sincerity. Sometimes it's a tactic to keep you emotionally accessible without offering anything of substance in return. You can even feel the difference in their energy. When they reach out, there's a strange mix of familiarity and distance. They want to act close enough to maintain their connection, yet far enough to avoid taking responsibility. This soft, subtle approach is their way of testing whether time has made you wiser or whether you're still vulnerable to them. Because if you respond emotionally, if you open the door without hesitation, if you show them you've been waiting, they know they still have influence, and for them, influence is more valuable than intimacy. But the danger of this soft return is that it can confuse you. It can awaken old feelings you thought you buried. It can make you question whether things could be different now, whether they've matured, whether they truly see your worth this time. Because they aren't returning with chaos, they're returning with calm, and calm can be disarming. Calm can feel safe. Calm can make you forget the storm that came before it. This is why so many people fall for this stage of the test. They want to believe the return means something meaningful. They want to believe the softness reflects change. They want to believe the person who hurt them has grown. But in reality, this gentle approach is often the phase before their real intentions show. It's the place where they gather information, observe your reactions, and see how much access they still have. Once they know they can still step into your emotional space, once they know you're welcoming, they either disappear again, feeling reassured, or they start pulling strings just to see how much you'll give this time. And this is where silence becomes your greatest weapon again. Not angry silence, not bitter silence, just grounded, controlled silence. Because silence communicates something their soft tactics cannot overwrite. It tells them you're not falling for emotional breadcrumbs anymore. It tells them you're not accessible simply because they decided to show up politely. It tells them your healing has strengthened your boundaries, not weakened them. Your lack of reaction is the barrier they didn't expect. They wanted the old version of you, the one who would reply quickly, who would melt with nostalgia, who would reopen the door eagerly. But instead, they're faced with someone who doesn't respond out of habit anymore, someone who chooses peace over history, someone who no longer confuses softness with sincerity. And when they realize that, the test ends not because they passed it, but because as you did, there comes a moment in every story where the past tries to return, not because it genuinely belongs in your future, but because it refuses to accept that its power over you has ended. Key point six is that moment when someone who once walked away, hurt you, or underestimated you begins to feel the weight of their own choices. It's subtle at first, almost invisible, but over time the energy shifts. The silence you held, the distance you kept, the growth you worked for, it all begins to echo in their mind louder than you ever could have by chasing or explaining. And this echo is what draws them back, not with love, not with commitment, but with curiosity, insecurity, and the desperate need to see whether you're still the version of yourself they once knew. Because here's the truth: when you stop giving someone effortless access to you, they start feeling the void they created. At first, they tell themselves they're fine, they distract themselves, surround themselves with noise, pretend their decision didn't affect them. But time has a way of stripping away illusions. Time has a way of making them reflect on the strength you showed by letting them go without a fight. Time has a way of exposing the difference between temporary excitement and lasting value. And eventually, they begin to see the one thing they didn't recognize before. You were the stable one, you were the solid presence in their life, you were the person who cared effortlessly, who gave without calculation, who stayed loyal without needing to be convinced. And once they realize that, regret doesn't hit immediately, it builds, it grows in layers. At first, it's just light curiosity. What are they doing now? Then it becomes nostalgia. Well, I had some good times. Then it becomes something deeper, something heavier. Maybe I shouldn't have let that go. And finally, it becomes the kind of regret that sits in the chest and doesn't leave. I can't get them back the same way anymore. This is when they come back, not because they suddenly understand how to treat you, not because they've changed, not because they're ready for something real, but because they want to see if they still matter. They come back hoping the door is still open, hoping time didn't change you too much, hoping you're still accessible. Their return is not always dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle, disguised as concern or curiosity. Sometimes it's a simple message, a random memory, a small question. But behind every hey or just checking on you is a fear they don't want to admit, the fear that they lost someone they never thought they'd have to fight for. But here's the twist: you're not the same person they walked away from. Silence changed you, pain matured you, distance rebuilt you. While they were trying to forget, you were evolving. While they were trying to replace you, you were leveling up. While they were hoping you'd stay in the same emotional place, you were learning to outgrow the version of yourself who tolerated their inconsistency. So when they finally come back to test you, they're not just testing your boundaries, they're testing their own relevance. They want to know if time made you stronger or if time made you weaker. They want to know if they still have influence, if they can still sway your emotions, if they still hold a place in your heart. And this is where your silence becomes the ultimate truth teller. Your calm response, your controlled distance, your lack of emotional reaction, they communicate the one thing they never expected to face. You outgrew the version of yourself who needed them. Your worth is no longer tied to their presence. Your happiness is no longer dependent on their attention. Your identity is no longer defined by their validation. And that realization, more than anything, is what hits them hardest, because the moment they discover that you don't need them anymore, that's the moment they finally understand what they lost. And that is where the real test ends, with you choosing your peace over their return,